Welcome back to ROSA Technocrat, your one-stop channel for Fortinet cybersecurity and real-world troubleshooting. In today's video, we are discussing a critical Fortiweb vulnerability advisory, FG-IR-25-910, recently published on FortiGuard. This vulnerability impacts multiple versions of Fortiweb, and if you are running Fortiweb in production, you need to stay till the end. Let's know more about this vulnerability. Very recently or yesterday, a new vulnerability from Fortinet has been published, and this impacts Fortiweb. This is a critical vulnerability, very critical. Stay till the end of this video to know how it impacts, how to verify if you are impacted by this vulnerability. And this is a very, very critical vulnerability that doesn't require any admin access. To know more details, please stay till the end of this video. Yesterday, Fortinet has released a vulnerability, that's path confusion vulnerability in GUI. So we have a product Fortiweb that is impacted by this vulnerability. So the IR number or the Fortinet identification number for this vulnerability is this FG-IR-25. Okay, released yesterday. Component GUI, what it impacts? The GUI. GUI means if your Fortiweb is having HTTPS enabled, or you can say management access enabled. Okay, component is affected. Component of Fortiweb is GUI. Severity is very critical. Severity is very critical with a very high score of 9.1. Under which category this vulnerability falls? Improper access control. That means Fortiweb is not handling the access control properly for a specific component. So as per OWASP or like security, this lies under improper access control, and the CVE ID assigned is 2025-64446. Okay. So before going into more detail, what is Fortiweb? You might be aware Fortiweb is a Fortinet's web application firewall. It protects the applications from SQL injection, XSS, and other kind of application attacks. Okay, protects web servers and applications, critical part of enterprise application security, because all your applications hosted on the organization sits behind Fortiweb, or they are published via Fortiweb. So this is what Fortiweb is. It's a web application firewall. It's a web application firewall, protects web servers and applications, critical part of enterprise application security. The CVE ID assigned to this vulnerability is this 2025-64446. Relative path traversal in web GUI. This tells us more about the vulnerability. So the vulnerability is something like the path traversal. I hope you know path traversal. See, there are two kinds of path traversal: absolute path traversal and relative path traversal. So this is a relative path traversal vulnerability, which means somehow the attacker is able to access a file which he should not access. So he is using some path traversal to different directories and then trying to access a file which he is not supposed to access, and he gets the admin access. So that's the path traversal vulnerability. What this vulnerability does is allows unauthenticated attacker to run admin commands. So if the attacker knows about this vulnerability, they will be able to run the admin commands on your Fortiweb. And you know, if they get admin command access, they can bring your services down, they can bring the device down, or even that can be a lateral movement to some other application or some other web servers if Fortiweb is having access to this. The affected versions. So if the Fortiweb in your organization is running version 8.0 or 1, 760, 749 or 720 or 70. So these are the affected versions which are affected by this vulnerability. How to check which version you are running and how to validate if you are impacted by this vulnerability or not, that I will let you know how to check it. First, let's check all the details about this. Then I will tell you how to verify if you are impacted by this vulnerability. So when we say 8.001, that means 8 dot version, 8.0 version. So there will be a upgrade or patched version in this, patched version in this. That will be a fixed version that we will be discussing next. So you have to verify which firmware version you are running on the Fortiweb to confirm if you are impacted. Now, when we say the impact, what is the impact? So impact is unauthenticated remote exploitation. This is important because the attacker doesn't needs any authentication. Attacker does not require any authentication. So this is very critical, right? That's why the vulnerability is super critical. Then potential complete Fortiweb takeover, because if he can run admin commands, as we discussed, if he can run admin commands, that means he can take a full takeover of the Fortiweb and he can cause service impact, DOS, shut down the box, anything he can do if he can run admin commands, right? Possible lateral movement, like if he got access to Fortiweb, from Fortiweb, if he is having some other device connecting, he may traverse and so on to other PCs or other components in the network. So possible lateral movement because he got the admin access to the Fortiweb. And a critical CVSS. Actively exploited in the wild means so many devices are being exploited. Listed in CISA KEB catalog, even the CISA, CISA, security agency. So they also listed this in the actively exploited catalog, and seen in real world attacks means there are ongoing attacks. So you should upgrade the devices immediately. And then coming to the mitigation. Okay, so what is the mitigation or how you can fix this? How you can fix is the recommended is upgrade to patched version. Recommended is upgrade to patched version. Workaround is restrict GUI access. Restrict the GUI access. So GUI access is like management access, and or disable the HTTP HTTPS on internet facing interfaces. Recommended actions: review logs for suspicious admin actions, limit management interface exposure, implement network segmentation. Now let's check this vulnerability from Fortinet perspective. So this is the article or the blog PSIRT that was published by Fortinet. A relative path traversal vulnerability in Fortiweb may allow an unauthenticated attacker. So unauthenticator is no need of credential. No need of credential, right? Okay, this is one thing. We already discussed all this. HTTP or HTTPS request. HTTP or HTTPS should be disabled. Okay. Affected version 8.0, 8.01, 760 through 764, 740 through 749, 720 through 7211, 700 through 7011. So the fixed version are already available. Upgrade to the latest patch in each version. So for 8. You should upgrade to 802. 76765 is the fix. 7410 is the fix. 7212 is the fix. And 7012 is the fix. So these are the fixed version where you have to upgrade. What is the workaround? Disable HTTP or HTTPS. That's it. So this is from a Fortinet perspective or Fortinet article. We discussed the mitigation step. Mitigation step is the safest and recommended approach, which is upgrading your Fortiweb device. If upgrade is not possible right now, apply temporary mitigations. Temporary mitigations can be restrict access to Fortiweb admin interfaces, allow management only from internal secure networks, ensure no public access to the management port, apply restrict ACL on trusted IP address, monitor logs for suspicious HTTP request patterns. Okay, so conclusion, this is a very critical Fortiweb vulnerability. Patch it immediately or take the workaround restricted actions. Let's talk about how to verify if you are impacted. Okay, so how to check if you are exposed? Log into your Fortiweb, go to system status, check the firmware version. If the firmware version falls under the impacted versions in any of the series, then you are impacted. Okay, apart from the firmware version, you have to see or consider below things as well. What you will consider? You will consider whether your Fortiweb is connected to internet or not. If it is only private or within a restricted network, then you don't need to worry. Second, interface is having HTTPS connectivity or not. Interface is having management enabled or not. If management is not enabled or GUI is not reachable over the internet, then it's okay, you can stay for some time. And third, like, do you have some other device before Fortiweb which restricts the connectivity? For example, this is your internet. From internet you are connected to a FortiGate FGT, and FortiGate is connected to a Fortiweb. Okay, so if the management interface of this Fortiweb is not allowed from outside, okay, this is denied, then also you are secure. So you need to consider multiple things. If you don't want to upgrade, you need to see if this device is connected to the internet, or are you considering your internal employees also a threat. So depending on your organization policy, you have to consider all these things. If the Fortiweb management interface is reachable to the internet or not, is it restricted to a specific IP address? So basically the vulnerability is on the management interface, where the HTTP and HTTPS of the page can be accessed, and you need to verify the firmware version. So two things you have to see: the firmware version and the whether you have allowed the access to the GUI or not. Okay, so now I will show you how to check it on a Fortiweb. When we log in onto a Fortiweb device, so after logging in, this is the management interface, or the IP address, or the interface on which you are logging in, that is the management interface. So if your management interface is restricted to limited IP address or only from specific devices, that means your device is not reachable to internet and you may be secure, or you may not need to upgrade. So I'm logged into the Fortiweb. On the Fortiweb, if you go under dashboard status, you will be able to see the firmware version here. So if you see here, my firmware version is 801. So 801 means it's impacted, because in 802 is the fixed version. So I can say all the versions are impacted. You have to upgrade. That's it. You don't need to verify like all the. So fixed version is just released yesterday, right? So that's why, not yesterday, I mean just before announcing the vulnerability, they might have released. So all the versions are impacted. So you have to check the firmware version and you have to update the firmware. The second thing you can do is you have to go under the interfaces of your Fortiweb. Okay, under the interface, check the interfaces that have HTTP and HTTP allowed, right? You can see here HTTP and HTTP allowed. So those interfaces that have HTTP, HTTPS enabled, you need to restrict those IP addresses from uh, attacker or from internet. So this IP address, for example, in my case, should not be reachable over the internet on HTTP, HTTPS port. So you may block this interface using the firewall policies on your network. So what you have to do is like verify the interfaces that have HTTP, HTTPS enabled. So you may want to disable them. So if you disable them, HTTP and HTTP. So if you disable them, then you also will not be able to log in on that particular interface. So what you can do, you can have a interface only for management which is not connected to the internet. So this is the workaround, like disable HTTP, HTTPS on the interface, or block these ports from internet or from outside so that Fortiweb is not reachable on these interfaces as a management interface. So that is what all you have to do. And my professional recommend, patch immediately, because patching or upgrading the device to a permanent fix is always a secure and the best method for your network, right? So at the end, additional thoughts, things to highlight. This is a 0-day attack exploited before patch, and it's a very urgent. Please verify. This vulnerability is listed in the US Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency non-exploited vulnerabilities, that is KEV, and so you should patch it, or you should have a workaround, disable the HTTP, HTTPS, or restrict it to only required audience, right? So hope this video was useful for you, and if you like the content, if you like the information, please do like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.